So you mentioned that you got sued. Tell us about
mention
that. Tell us about that. What was that like?
It wasn't a fun process. I think
0 out of 10 would not do it again.
0 out of 10 wouldn't recommend it. So I think like my biggest thing, and that's why I wanted to start the platform, because at this point, like, that was rock bottom. Getting sued and getting the notice, like, you cannot DIY yourself out of a lawsuit. Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
I don't recommend that unless you're a lawyer. So I got a notice in the mail. I didn't know what it was. It just says notice, and then it says, your name. It has this court date. It was Queens County. I was in Queens at the time. Queens County Court, plaintiff, defendant, and then it says, like, you have however many days or something. It says, like, this is what is going on. Like, so you owe this much money to this person. You have to respond to this, like, notice. So I'm like, what is this? So I started trying to Google all the, like, some of the terms on the paper, because I didn't know, like, this is how a lawsuit starts. Like, they've filed a complaint, now you have to respond. If you don't respond, they can get a judgment, apparently, or something. I'm not a lawyer, so don't, none of this is legal advice, but if you do respond, it has to be in, like, a very, a lawyer like just legalese kind of, like, wording and all this stuff. So you got to just make sure you know what you're talking about. And then they come back and it starts going back and forth. And then eventually either you go to court, or if you don't respond, they try to get a judgment, a default judgment on you, saying, like, okay, now we can garnish your wages. And that's what not usually, but what happens to some people, because, they don't respond to these notices. And then it's like, oh, default judgment. The lender goes and, like, oh, they haven't said anything. They go to the court and say, hey, can we get a default judgment? They haven't shown up. They're not here. It's like, okay, yeah. And then your wages get garnished and all that jazz, your taxes and all that stuff. So I got that notice, started Googling. I said, okay, this is how a lawsuit starts. Tried to find a lawyer. Didn't really have the money for a lawyer at the time, but my bonus was coming through. So that helped out a lot. Taxes were coming through. I knew I was going to get a tax refund, so that helped. Got her on the phone, and I said, hey, I have this really weird situation, and I don't know how else to, like, to describe this to you, but I need help, like, getting out of this. Not getting out of it, but just, like, buying some time. I think I'm getting sued. So she looked over the notice. She said, yeah, you're getting sued. And I told her this story, and I don't think that she believed me at first. So what I told her was, and this is why I say, like, just handle the hard things. I told her this story where, I went to school. I went to Rutgers for a year. I took out this student loan. Then I transferred to USF. That's where I ended up graduating from. And when I transferred there, and this, like, lawsuit story won't apply to 99% of the people that default. Like, this is just a rare case that happened to me. I took out this student loan, transferred to USF, and then when I'm there as a full-time student, since I had started college, I had concurrently been a full-time student, so there was no breaks, there was no, it was, fall and spring semester, back-to-back. And I said, I took out this loan, and now, like, I remember getting default notices in the mail when I was a junior in college. And I was like, well, how? That's when I said, it has to be a mistake, because I'm still a full-time student. And, when you're 20 and you're getting these notices, it's like, it's scary as hell. You don't, like, I didn't want to bother my mom about it. My mom's a single parent. She, at the time, was paying off her loans. And, like, it's just not something, when you're 20, you're, like, grown. Yeah. You don't want your parents in your business. So it's like, not something I wanted to bring.
And then then as you go toward 30, you're like, okay, you can be my
Where's the birthday card money?
Yeah, like, I'm shaking the card again. Anyway.
No, so I just didn't take care of it. And I knew that it was a mistake. Obviously, like, I knew it was a mistake. Eventually ended up calling them, and I said, hey, like, I've been getting all these notices. Like, what's going on? I'm a full-time student. This doesn't make any sense. I think at the worst case scenario, I'm supposed to pay this back, like, the day after I graduate. But, like, I'm a full-time student.
Right.
They're like, oh, well, we haven't been able to see you in the system. You need to send us proof that you're a full-time student. Cool. Do that. Which that made no sense to me, because I was at a public university. and for whatever reason, my lawyer, fast forward to 2016, was able to pull me up in the National Clearinghouse immediately. I pulled myself up. So I'm like, that's strange that you guys couldn't find me. Sent them proof. And mind you, that default had already gone on to my credit report.
Right.
So this particular company, I was actually reading stuff about them yesterday. Clearly, like, and I think people like, I went on a rant yesterday about this student loan issue because I think some people were kind of like making fun of the fact they're like, oh, this girl like wants to be a personal finance person after she gets sued. And it's like, no, I've worked in finance. I have my degree in finance. Like that's not, and not saying that you need to have any of that to be a personal finance person, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
I lost my train of thought. But
your rant about student loans.
Yes, rant about student loans. So I think like I just didn't have the ability to. I was overwhelmed. I didn't want to handle it. Call them up. They said, okay, you send us your proof. You'll be taken care of. Mind you, I had already experienced damages at this point because I moved back, tried to get an apartment. Something was going on with my credit. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I had to put down a bigger security deposit, and I just kept it moving. Like didn't think to like check my credit. None of that. Then I'm getting these notices. Finally, like, work up the courage to call them. They say, send us the proof. So I sent them the proof. Done deal. And then I just, like let it go.
Right.
And I shouldn't have. Long story short, I shouldn't have. Fast forward to then 2016. Obviously, clearly had defaulted. My lawyer's, like, trying to buy me time. I started saving all the money that I could. I got on a budget. I started changing my finances around. Paid it in full. But my lawyer had a really big issue with that because she said, they had already caused you material damages of which they had violated the terms of the promissory note before anything had even happened.
Right.
By a simple, clerical mistake. And this happens all the time to a lot of people, whether it be like their credit reports, because, there's so many Americans that have, 3 out of 5 Americans have some mistake on their credit report. Maybe I'm making that up. I might be lying, but I know there's a statistic around it. But I was looking at this loan company yesterday. They are known for handling payments and all this stuff. So it's just like, did it happen to me? Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I should have handled it when I should have, back then. I was overwhelmed. I was 20. I didn't know what I was doing. That wasn't my focus. I was trying to get through school. I was trying to work full time. That was the last thing on my mind of paying this bill that I just brushed off as a mistake. So yeah, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, defaulting on a student loan.
Do you feel like that experience had an impact on your ability to pay off a lot of debt in a short amount of time?
Yeah, that was the rock bottom. It sparked just because back to our earlier conversation, there's just so much contingent upon. So at the time I was at a bank where most banks, you have to self-report if you get a judgment. And then that means you get called into HR and it's like, hey, what's going on? And you are at risk of losing your job, which then has a, domino effect, because then how am I going to go to another bank if I have a judgment on my credit report, which they're going to pull and say, we can't give you this job. And then there's my livelihood. So yeah, it sparked that had a major impact in saying you need to save as much as you can, stop fooling around and get this taken care of so you don't actually lose your livelihood. Because then what am I going to do at that point? 2016, I don't know, carry the 1 plus the 2. I don't know. I was around 28. I'm making this up, somewhere around there. Then what am I just going to go back to school and try to get my teaching degree? Right. What am I going to do if, my background is in finance? How am I going to make that pivot? And I told you, I identified with that and that was my world and, everything. So that's all I could see